Now let's look at the stages in the development of a nutrient deficiency. So there's two types of nutrient deficiencies. One is a primary deficiency, and this is one caused by when the person doesn't have that nutrient in the diet enough and sufficient qualities. So an inadequate diet causes a primary deficiency. And then there's also secondary deficiencies caused by a problem in the body. So if the body doesn't absorb enough, maybe excretes too much, or uses that nutrient inefficiently, it will result in a secondary deficiency. And primary deficiencies can be identified by a diet history. So if you look at somebody's dietary intake over a few days, you'll probably be able to see if, for example, they have inadequate iron in their diet or another nutrient. And a secondary deficiency might be able to be revealed through a health history. So with the example of iron again, maybe we can look at their health history. Maybe they have a bleeding problem. Maybe they're a woman with a very heavy period, so they excrete too much iron, and this is revealed in a health history. This leads to declining nutrient stores, and at this point, it will be a subclinical deficiency, which is a covert condition. It might not be detected yet by laboratory tests, and there's not outward signs and symptoms. But it will cause the body to function abnormally. And at this point, we're looking at laboratory tests. And then lastly, if the nutrient continues to not be absorbed properly or the diet continues to be inadequate, it will lead to physical signs and symptoms. In the case of iron, it will lead to anemia. And we can measure this with a physical examination or anthropometric measures. So there might be some weakness, some fatigue, some headaches reflecting this iron deficient state in the blood. Now, food plays a vital role in supporting our health and affecting our risk of chronic disease. As you know, chronic disease is at epidemic levels. They used to be called rich countries' problems, but now chronic diseases are becoming epidemic in developing countries as well. 3 out of 5 deaths worldwide are related to chronic disease. And here are the top 10 causes of death in the United States. And as you can see, the ones in bold are diet related: heart disease, cancers, strokes, and diabetes. Now, even if the cause of death is listed as heart disease, it's usually related to multiple factors over many years. So a person who died of heart disease may have been overweight and had high blood pressure, or been a smoker, and spent many years eating a poor diet, high in saturated fat, not getting a lot of exercise. But of course, if you have heart disease, you might not necessarily fit this description. People who are live healthy lives who are non-smokers can also die of heart disease too, depending on their genetics. But the risk factors for chronic disease tend to cluster and persist over time. These factors: tobacco use, poor diet and inactivity, alcohol, these tend to go together as lifestyle, so they tend to cluster together. And the prominence of certain risk factors seems to synergize to affect the risk of chronic disease. Now let's talk about highlight 1. How do we know what nutrition information we're getting is accurate, and how do we know if the information is reliable? So one question to ask yourself is, who is providing this information? What are their qualifications? Are they registered dietitians or diet technicians registered with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics? Or are they just a normal person who is claiming to be an expert in nutrition? Are they a doctor? Do they have a PhD, etc.? And on the internet, anyone can publish anything. Again, there's no peer review process like there is for other published research, so there's no guarantees of any accuracy. So when you're evaluating a website on the internet, ask the questions: who published this? When was it published? When was the site last updated? Since nutrition is an ever-changing science, an accurate website will likely be updated often and very frequently. Where is the information coming from? So if you're looking at the three letters following the dot in a website's address, you can see that website's affiliation. So if it ends in .gov, it's from the government. .edu is an educational institute. .org is an organization, and those are usually reliable when compared with maybe a .com, because that could be just anybody. And then you could ask yourself why. Why is the site giving you the information? Are they trying to sell you a certain product? So, there's many sites maybe selling you a diet supplement or some other commercial product that do provide accurate information, but some do not. So if money is the prime motivator, you're going to want to be aware that there might be some bias in that information. And lastly, what is the message that they're promoting? Is it in line with, other sources that might actually be reliable? If their information contradicts other reliable information that's also available, it's a pretty good indication that it should be questioned. Sometimes, certain products will say that they found the one true secret to speeding up your metabolism, etc., or something like that. And if they're the only ones touting that information, it's likely not going to be accurate. So nutrition in the news. The news is one way to get nutrition information, but they often tell a lopsided story because they're not necessarily there to give you the most reliable information, but they want to give you the best story, something that'll keep you watching that channel or keep you buying that newspaper. So they often rely on testimonials. And again, when we're looking at research, we want a large sample size. So one person's story isn't necessarily accurate or reliable. They're running under tight deadlines, so they might not have time to do all the research that's necessary for a very thorough picture. And journalists, while they're excellent writers and researchers, often have limited understanding of science. And they often focus on topics that are current and controversial, again, because they want to sell papers or keep you watching that channel. So in order to identify nutrition experts, you're going to want to look for registered dietitian. To become a registered dietitian, you have to have a degree in nutrition and then do a clinical internship, pass a national exam, and then maintain up-to-date knowledge in the field. Physicians and other healthcare professionals like nurses are also a reliable source, but remember, their training in nutrition is very limited. There's been nurses and doctors that I've worked with that have told me that they only had to take one nutrition class, but yet the public often looks at them as experts in nutrition and diet. A third type of expert is a registered dietetic technician. And like dietitians, they also have to have a 2-year degree in this case versus a 4-year degree for a registered dietitian. And they also have to go through the passing of a national exam and maintaining their registration through that continuing professional education. And registered dietitians and dietetic technicians often work very closely together in hospital settings, food service settings, community nutrition settings, etc. So look for fake credentials. You're going to want to look for whether or not the college a person went to is accredited. There's diploma mills and fraudulent businesses that will hand out certificates of training in nutrition, but they aren't always legitimate and they don't always involve a thorough training in nutrition. You just sort of pay $50 and get a certificate. And then, the one question I would encourage you to ask yourself is who's making money off of this information? And if someone's making money off of it, then that might be a red flag. So here are some red flags of these Wonder Pills and Super Trim pills that you might look for. So one of them is satisfaction guaranteed. So, marketers might make you a promise that you're definitely going to get what you want, but then you might not be able to collect on that promise. Good health isn't always guaranteed and things ebb and flow. So that's one thing to look for, satisfaction guaranteed. Another, one product does it all. No one product, could possibly treat everything. That would be too good to be true. If it's not time tested or if it's a newfound treatment. When we learned about research, we want other people to validate the results and retest in multiple studies. So if it's something very, very new, it might not be trusted. If the findings were accurate, they would be very publicized and accepted by many health professionals because they went through the robust process of research. Another one to look for, personal testimonials. Again, hearsay is the weakest form of evidence. We want a large group of people, not just one person saying something works. And this is kind of a big one now. A lot of companies like to use complicated terms and talk about, biohacks and beating your metabolism. And a lot of times these phony terms will hide their lack of actual scientific proof. So here we have beats the hunger stimulation point, the HSP. You might think, oh, this sounds very complicated and like they know what they're talking about, but there's actually no such thing as a hunger stimulation point. And this is also a popular one right now. So natural, saying things are natural kind of lends them a whole food sort of quality. So natural is not necessarily better or safer. Just because it comes from an herb doesn't mean it's safe or even effective. A lot of herbs can cause side effects or even be toxic at very high limits. And the word natural isn't regulated by the FDA. So this is another one to look out for. Just